We're back with part 2 from author and accomplished horsewoman Lynn Acton. If you missed part 1, you're going to want to go back and catch episode 71 because it was a good one. In part 1, she introduced her concept of protector leadership when working with horses, and she started her list of actions that we can do to help our horses feel more safe when we're working in EAS. So today she's going to finish that list and talk to us about a lot of things, most of which is desensitization, which I know is a hot topic for us EAS folks for sure, including how we transition the trust that our horses build with our qualified horse staff to our volunteers and our leaders and the folks that are really handling them every day. So building positive experiences for our horses is really the way to do that. And Lynn is going to tell us how to achieve it before we send our horses into lessons. Shelby and I got so much out of our chat with Lynn, and I know you will too. So enjoy. What's the next step?
Well, next step is one where, and this ties into your horses needing to learn to deal with a lot of different things, and that is using learning modes that engage their innate intelligence. Conditioned response, the pressure release sort of thing, we can't get away from that. That's an absolute integral part of horsemanship. You know, if you don't have pressure, you don't have any way to give your horse cues when you're riding. So I'm not trying to get rid of negative reinforcement. We'll always need that. But horses have 3 other ways they learn. They learn through positive reinforcement, also through social learning and investigative behavior. So the social learning ties into the body language. When we use our body language, we can be teaching a horse what we want him to do or how to respond to a verbal cue by having him copy our body language. So you say walk, you walk, he walks with you. Then when you want him to trot, you say trot or give your cluck, start trotting, and he gets the idea pretty quickly, oh, I copy my person. And then he can associate the word trot or the cluck with, okay, this means I'm supposed to jog now.
This was one of the hardest things for me to learn, especially when I was starting my young one, is that like, if you act nervous, he's going to act nervous. You know, like if you walk by that door and it was really scary last time, and then you go to walk by it again, and I'm like, oh, please don't freak out. Please don't freak out. You know, he's going to freak out. So it's like that, you know, social learning has so much to do with kind of our energy and them mirroring us, which is what they do intuitively. Right.
Yeah. So I think one of the most counterproductive ones of those is when you want a horse to stand still and you lunge him around or run around and yell at him and scold him for moving his feet. Well, the best way I found to teach a horse to stand still is I just stand like, I'm going to go to sleep now. And he can move around on his lead as long as he doesn't turn his butt to me or yank on the lead. And after a while, the horse looks at you and goes like, why am I running around? You're going to sleep. I guess I can chill. So there's unexpected ways, I think, for many people that we can model what we want for them. And that means a lot less negative reinforcement. Mm-hmm. And copying somebody else in their social group is something that comes naturally to horses. Horses do it as games, and then it can become play. So do you have any clients who work with the horses on the ground, or are yours all riding? Yep. You use some on the ground. So this is the kind of thing that that people can play with. Once the horse gets the hang of it, you stand next to the horse, and if you put your head down, the horse copies you, puts his head down. You take a step back, he takes a step back with you. So this is called mirroring or synchronizing or copying. People use different terms for it. But it all means you're playing this game where the horse is copying you. Mm-hmm. And kids can really get a kick out of so like, oh, look at this, I crossed my legs and the horse crosses, like, or I put my foot up on top of this pedestal and the horse put his foot up there too. I have a great picture of my grandson yawning, huge yawn, and the horse standing next to him has a huge yawn at the same time. Can you get your horse to yawn? So these are things that can be incorporated into ground lessons. And coming back to Jack's book, because you'd mentioned about horses having to cope with riders who are off balance And that can cause horses physical stress as well as the emotional. And digressing for a moment, horses cope with physical stress much better when they feel emotionally secure. So that comes back to, they feel safe with you. Okay, well, this is a little uncomfortable, but I know that somebody's going to be looking out for me, and then I can put up with it for now. But at the same time, to have the physical therapy that helps the horse feel better physically, if you take something like Jack's 55 corrective exercises, they can be done by somebody who's doing groundwork with the horse. Oh, look, if you lead him over these poles, and let's encourage him to put his head down while we lead him over the poles. And this is good for his back, and it helps him stretch his back and neck. And so the person on the ground kind of becomes the physical therapist for the horse. Mm-hmm. And I would see that as something as a really empowering thing, a positively empowering thing for a client to learn, oh, I can help this horse, especially the horse that they feel connected to.
Yes. With my therapy hat on, I'm thinking that would be very empowering for participants and building confidence and feeling like, especially for a lot of our participants, I think that have disabilities or have limitations, they're used to being taken care of a lot, and they don't get the opportunity to really take care of other things or feel really needed in a lot of different areas of their life. And so giving them opportunity to care for the horses, even like feeding them and things like that, they love, but doing something like exercises could be really interesting.
I love that perspective, because, for somebody who doesn't have a lot of chance to work independently, most of the corrective exercises, or many of them, are done slowly, methodically. So it's something, it doesn't require somebody with a lot of athletic ability or even a lot of horse handling skill, other than just knowing how to use their body language as best they can to cue the horse for leading. And even with people whose disabilities don't allow them to use the standard body language, as clearly, horses catch on so well. They so well adapt to what other people can do, or how to interpret. I mean, I'm just fundamentally clumsy, and I have a vision problem. And horses all figure out how to adapt to it. It's like, oh yeah, we know what Lynn means, even though she's not very clear about it. So we'll give her. And the other learning mode is investigative behavior. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but horses in the wild can't afford to run from everything. They had to inspect the world, figure out what's safe, what do we run from? Otherwise, they'd spend all day running from things. They never have a chance to, eat, sleep, and raise the kids. So, how foals are really curious. They check out every new thing. But domestic horses don't often get a chance to go around and check out the world. They may be limited to a paddock, or limited to, if they're lucky, a big pasture, but they don't get to see a whole lot of different stuff. So then when you bring them into a training setting, there's all kinds of new things. And one of the ways that people are often taught to deal with it is desensitizing. Well, we'll just make them go past it over and over and over again until they get over it. We'll wave the plastic bag in their face until they stop reacting. Well, this is how you get the bomb-proof horses who are really just shut down, not actually trained. So instead, we want to turn this into a cognitive learning process. So let's take, say, a ball, because you use balls, right? Yeah. So instead of having a horse stay in one place while somebody does something with the ball, you turn it into a game of, let's investigate. You encourage the horse's curiosity. One of the positive emotions that's really, really powerful is curiosity. And most people don't make anywhere near enough use of curiosity as a learning tool and as a tool to reduce fear. So we take a ball, and if we just start throwing it around, the horse might get very reactive. But if we leave it stationary, let the horse check it out, let the horse stay away from the away from the ball while somebody else moves the ball. So when I first got Brandy introduced to balls, I rolled one up and down the barn aisle while she was hanging out in the barn on a hot summer day. And she got to watch me playing with it, but she was safely in her stall and could go to the back of her stall. Well, pretty soon she's hanging over the stall door, like, well, okay, what else does this funny thing do? And And we took it out in the arena, and I rolled the ball and let her follow me at a distance where she was comfortable. If you let a horse follow something, their curiosity kicks in, and when they want to come toward it. If you take it at them, the horse wants to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really simple. If you have a movable item that is potentially scary, you just move it away from the horse, let his curiosity kick in, and until he chooses to come up and investigate it.
Mm-hmm. One thing we do if we get one at Hetra that gets to be a little bit more reactive to new items is similar to kind of your technique is when we start to introduce toys to them, rather than introducing them head on, we'll take them and we'll work that horse in the arena at the same time that another horse is working around the toys or working with the toys. So they're able to see another horse working with the toys. And kind of able to see like nothing's going to eat him, nothing's going to, jump out and be super scary at him. And then once they kind of get comfortable with that, then we take that same approach. We call it the chase method. So we're going to make them chase the ball, and it's always, out of walk, but, or the noodle or, the tambourine, whatever it is. And they're chasing it. And then what they start to learn is then if they touch it, it stops. And so then we get to this point where, they're curious, they're investigating, and they touch it and the movement stops. And then you get to, at that point, then generally what we see is two different kinds of horses. They'll touch anything because they think that's what you want, right? So
Right.
like we touched it and it stopped.
Yeah.
It stopped moving. Or we get the horses that will say, okay, I touched it and it stopped, but that's not as fun. So then they, start flipping it again or whatever to get it to make noise or move or whatever. And then at that point, we're really able to move into that more, kind of traditional desensitizing that's not taking it right at them, but getting them more comfortable with those objects moving around them in what would be more of a session setting, but
Because they feel safe with it because they already investigated it,
But I do think that's one area where doing a lot of presentations and speaking with people in this industry that they run into a lot of trouble. Well, this horse is really spooky. Well, yeah, there are some horses that are more spooky than others, or they're more anxious than others. But a lot of times what I find is that the approach to desensitizing that horse, or the approach to getting that horse comfortable in the environment was not appropriate for what that horse's core personality is. And that's when they run into a lot of trouble with those horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. If you take the standard desensitizing means you want the horse to stand still and let you do something to him over and over and over again for no apparent reason from the horse's point of view.
Right.
So, that doesn't build trust in the handler either. It's like, here, I thought I could trust this person, and she's doing this stuff that's really scary. Why? But when you use investigative behavior, you encourage the horse's curiosity, then you've become the friend and the mentor who's right there with moral support, providing fun games. So it's all positive. And I like it. People do it differently, but I have found it's most effective if you allow the horse maximum freedom for investigative behavior. So instead of having any control over the horse, if you can safely leave him loose while he watches somebody else play, that's the social learning again, observing somebody else, learning by observing somebody else. So if he's loose while he watches somebody play with it, then he can choose to come up to it at his own pace, as opposed to, say, having him on lead, which, sometimes you need to do for safety. But if you do, then a loose lead is best, so that the horse is telling you, I'm ready to go closer to this, or I'm not. And I encourage them to do whatever they can do with an object, like with the ball. I encourage them to shove it. And I don't know if you use any food training, but you can even use this with any other reinforcement, is if the horse shoves the ball, and this was Brandy's anxiety right from the start, was like, what, I'm not really sure, because this thing seems to like sort of move around on its own. This is kind of weird. Well, when she figured out that she could put her nose on it and push it and make it go, it was like, oh, I'm in charge of the ball. All right, let me go give that thing a great big shove. And that became a game that she enjoys playing, is chasing a giant ball around the arena. And a game that she could play with my grandkids too, because safely off lead, and they would take turns pushing the ball. Whoever got to it first got to push it. You can do the same thing with pretty much any other obstacle that you need them to deal with. They have to learn to be accustomed to wheelchairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can watch somebody using a wheelchair safely out of range, and then when they get curious, let them come toward it. And I know it's not going to hurt me, and it may make funny noises, and the wheels may go around, but not a problem. And especially when you're introducing something new, if you stay between the horse and the potentially scary object, you're saying, I'm protecting you from this. So watch me play with this, and you'll see I'm not worried about it, and it's not hurting me.
This podcast is sponsored in part by Wooden Horse Corporation and the Equicizer. The Equicizer, a handcrafted, non-motorized mechanical horse, is currently being used by hundreds of equine assisted services programs worldwide. The Equicizer requires no electricity, tools, or maintenance and can be used anywhere, indoors or out, for evaluations, warm-ups, stretching before lessons, mounting and dismounting practice, emergency procedures, or volunteer training. The Equicizer can also aid in reducing fear and building confidence for both students, clients, and volunteers. It can easily carry the weight of 2 adults, offering the option to ride tandemly for those riders who may need more support. To learn more about the Equicizer for your equine assisted activities, visit equicizer.com. That's EQUICIZER.com.
You're thinking like you're looking like you're thinking about something, Shelby.
Yeah.
Were you thinking?
Yeah, I am actually. So one of the things that I want to comment on, because you're spot on with everything you're saying. One of the things I want to comment that I think people in this industry is a really big challenge is I could go and do that with a lot of our horses that I have built a rapport with, and they know me and they trust me and they know they're safe with me. But then we go to session time and they're with volunteers that they've never met before. They don't know this person from Adam. And so I think that's a really big leap to expect that those horses are going to take the trust that they've built with me, and now they're going to have the same trust with the volunteer who's handling them in their sessions. And I think that's a really big jump for horses. And so I think that goes back to really, really, really consistent handling and management of your staff and your volunteers and your people who are around your horses. And I think that's the best way we can set these horses up for success, is that we have to have some step through procedure. So when they're going into their sessions, if they know me, they trust me, I need to be the one that's there with them in that first session and helping them make that transition. So they know that it's somebody they trust. We have rapport, and then we need to start working towards other people building that trust and rapport and moving those people into sessions until that horse gets to a place where they're comfortable in the session environment. They're comfortable that everybody's going to handle them in a similar manner. They have the same expectations from every person. They're not expected to stay closer or further from Katie as they are to me, and really making that transition successful. And that's one of the things that I hear people say a lot in this industry is, how do we transition new horses into our program? Nobody wants to use new horses. Nobody wants to use new horses. And I think that's where a lot of programs struggle, is the people who have built the rapport and gotten the horses comfortable with the program are not the ones who are handling them in day-to-day sessions. And so you do see different behaviors from them because they don't necessarily trust the person that's handling them unless they've put in the work.
Well, and what kind of energy is that person giving, right? So like, we're seasoned horse people, and we've been working with this horse where we feel comfortable with how that horse is going to respond and what's going to happen. Whereas when you have a volunteer who comes in and we've extensively trained them as much as we can, but at the end of the day, don't maybe have as much experience and might, come in with a level 1 or 2, anxiety on a scale of 10, with the session. And is that going to reflect onto our horse too? I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think, and that's why when they can start with just you, Shelby, and get a sense of, okay, you're safe, then that begins to extend to other people. And to the extent that you can train your volunteers and other people handling the horses to have a similar sort of quiet, supportive approach to them, the more we can develop a baseline of security, because horses have the more time horses spend in a positive emotional state, the more resilient they are when something goes wrong. And what you're doing when you're working with them, Shelby, is you're creating that positive emotional state from their security. And so each new person who provides that security provides more hours in that positive emotional state, so that the horse develops a default of, well, if something goes wrong, somebody's going to be looking out for me. They develop a sort of an optimism. The researchers actually call it optimism, that the horse assumes if something goes wrong or something new happens, it's going to be okay. Whereas a pessimistic horse who's defensive and doesn't feel taken care of has then the view of like, something went wrong. Okay, it's gonna go worse from here. So each step of that way, you're progressing toward a horse who's more resilient and has lower emotional stress. And I wonder if a basic thing that everybody handling a horse could be taught is, when in doubt, stop and take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
That can almost never be the wrong thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when in doubt, check with somebody about whether the horse is getting anxious. I don't know how much assistants have a chance to do that in real time. But the other thing is, a lot of people have really good intuition that's been squelched by trainers that say, you've got to be the boss. So I tell people, trust your intuition. And it's amazing how often that's all it takes for people to go, okay, well, I thought my horse was being anxious, but the trainer said she wasn't. She was just being bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think we at Hetra try to offer a lot of opportunity for that through like our leader practices, where they come in and they practice with our horses, leading them and getting used to them. And we have a staff member there that can help troubleshoot some of that stuff. And that seems to be really, really helpful for us. And I just think about, some other centers that don't, that might not spend that time, with their leaders. And it, to me, just feels like not only is that, kind of a liability safety wise, right? But also it's doing a disservice to our horses and even perpetuating, burnout or some of those other things we see in our horses, because, we're not teaching those leaders to be intuitive and educated, leaders for our horses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I would imagine that the leaders that you train tend to stay longer because it must be more gratifying to have that sense of being part of a really positive team.
Yeah, that's one thing we do see. So we have our leaders, we have different leader levels. When somebody comes to volunteer with us, they don't ever start as a horse leader. They start as a sidewalker, and then they learn to groom, and then they learn to tack, and then they can go through leader training, and they have to do all these practices before they're ever going to actually lead a horse in our sessions. And then at that point, we have them split out into blue, gold, and then platinum. And our horses are also split similarly. So our horses are split into blue, gold, and platinum. So our blue leader humans are going to be your people who are they've just gone through the process. They're your least experienced people. And our blue leader horses are going to be our horses who are our most steady Eddie, our most comfortable, our most like, this is their bread and butter. They could do this job in their sleep. And our gold leaders are going to be humans, people who have they know the skills pretty well. They've gotten through the process. They're pretty solid on it. We don't ever use, we don't pull on our horse's face. We use a wand to communicate in body language. And so they're really solid in those skills. And our gold leader horses are going to be the horses who, again, are very, very solid in their jobs, but maybe are a little bit more testy. If you don't do it 100% right, they might not stop exactly where you want them to.
Mm-hmm.
Just challenge a little bit more. And then finally, our platinum level humans are going to be the people who have the hard skills. They use the wand appropriately 100% of the time, but they're also intuitive enough that they're very in tune with their body language, their emotion. They're in tune with the different horses' personalities. They can go from one horse to another with two very different personalities and adjust their leading technique to accommodate that horse. And our platinum level horses are going to be either our horses who are new, so that are new to our program, or we have horses who they'll forever be a platinum leader horse because they're just sensitive. They're more sensitive to how people are using the wand or the energy somebody brings to a session. And so those horses would not be successful with our blue leaders, who maybe are a little bit more nervous about the skill to start with. They don't know the skill 100%. We would never pair those two together.
Yeah.
And that's really helped set our herd up for success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's a brilliant arrangement. I mean, it sounds like that's an absolute recipe for having horses be successful in your program, and having people take pride in their skill, in their advanced skill.
And what we found, going back to the original question, I got sidetracked. Going back to the original comment I was going to make is that we do hear from our horse leaders, as they get through those levels, like our retention rate when people get to a platinum level horse leader, they don't leave. We haven't had somebody leave from their volunteer position at a platinum level leader in probably 5+ years. They don't leave. They enjoy what they're doing. They enjoy the training. They feel qualified to do what we're asking them to do. They feel safe. They get tied in. And we find that the higher that our volunteers get in the kind of training pyramid, the less likely that we are to have volunteer turnover. They like it. They want to learn.
Sure. Yeah. And you've given them the pride of and the excitement of learning.
Yeah.
That's great.
Really quickly, just for our listeners, what Shelby just talked about, we have done several webinars on. So if you're a center who's interested in how we formulated those volunteer, levels and how we train our leaders and how we do all that, I'll put those webinars in the show notes for you guys to check out if you're interested. So just a side note. So after you investigate or you learn the learning styles, is there anything else that helps contribute to helping horse feel safe, Lynn?
Well, generally anything that builds confidence with positive experiences. If even something as simple as going for a lead line walk someplace that the horse enjoys going, and to the extent that clients are able to do this, then it's doubly therapeutic. And the way that you do your introduction to new objects, that's one of the bigger things that you have, since I'm assuming you don't take horses to travel or, do competitions or anything. So your focus is on their ability to do their job. And by making all of the training positive experiences, then again, you're creating those optimistic assumptions where the horse goes, something new, but it's going to be okay. Because when something new comes along, it's always okay.
Exactly.
If it's not Shelby, then okay, it's somebody else that's Shelby trained. So it'll take care of it. And you're also already doing the sixth thing that on our list, and that is protect them from unnecessary stress. Life has stress. That's the way it is. And in a lot of ways, therapeutic riding horses have extra stress, but you don't put anything unnecessary on them because you're not asking them to be, say, round penned by a lot of different people in the name of a leadership program or something like that. You actually have them ready for, prepared for their jobs, so that they can feel confident and comfortable with what they're doing.
I think another thing to add on that, Lynn, is really identifying what is stress for each horse too, because there's global stressors for horses, yes, but I feel like horses' personalities, there's some things that are stressful for one horse that wouldn't be stressful for another. And so taking the time to really appreciate what is stressful for each horse, and then understanding that and trying to not put that horse into stressful situations that are stressful for that horse is really important too. Because like we have horses here that absolutely love people. Like when we do an event, they love it. They want their head out. They want to be talking to everybody. They love to see all these people come through the barn. And then we have horses who are like, I don't want to see the public. I don't want to talk to the public. I want to just do my job. And that's all I'm here for. They like people, but they only like the people they know. They don't want to meet a bunch of new friends. And so whenever we have events or things like that, we try to be really respectful. And if those horses that don't like those events, we try to leave them outside in their paddock. They don't have to come in and they don't have to be a part of that. But the horses that love that, they love it. And so really identifying those things in your horses is very important.
Yeah.
It is. That's brilliant. I mean, that's the whole thing is meeting the needs of the individual horses. And it sounds like you can have horses who are big extroverts and love the attention, and you respect the fact that some horses are introverts, but they can still at the same time do their job reliably. They just don't want to have to do it around a whole bunch of people. And that's fair. So you're modeling the empathy for the horses that, when we tune into what their emotions are, what their needs are, then we help them have their best life with good emotional health, good mental health, and they can enjoy themselves and be reliable.
That's right.
One more point. This is a real quick one, but sometimes people think that when you tune into horses' emotions, it means that we then let them make too many choices and we lower our safety standards. That is absolutely backwards. The more we tune into their emotions, the better we can maintain safe standards and reliable cooperation, because we put the horse in an emotional state to be able to do his best job.
That's right. And I feel like that comes so much from like a robust conditioning program and working with your horses, like you said, to just build those positive experiences, right?
Yeah. And I do think too, Lynn, you've said two things that have brought this to my mind today now, but one thing that we see in adaptive riding or therapeutic programs is we get horses who are bomb-proof, quotations, that come in that, like you said earlier, they're just shut down. They're not actually bomb-proof. They're just completely shut down. And that goes back to allowing the horses to make their choices. And that horse is really functioning in a state of learned helplessness, right? They have no choices. They've never been allowed to make choices. And so they are shut down. They are bomb-proof because they've never been allowed to choose otherwise. We've seen horses here that have come in and they present as really solid, safe citizens. And when they get here and they enter our training program and we start to kind of peel back those layers and they start to learn that they can make choices, not only can they make choices, but we encourage them to make choices. Sometimes it takes a really long time to get that horse back to a functional level, because that's a lot of, I call it shadow work. That's a lot of shadow work that horse has to do in order to go from being completely checked out, their, lights are on, nobody's home, to being a functional citizen who's capable of making choices and being a emotionally happy member of our herd.
Yes, and a number of people have mentioned that sometimes when you let them make choices, some of them will go overboard a little bit, like, well, I've got choices now, and I'm going to say no to that. And it's a phase, and you have to understand that this is a process for them to get back. But it's brilliant that you have been able to do that, because many people struggle when they get a shutdown horse and are never able to help them open up and become emotionally and behaviorally functional again. That's it's a huge credit to your work with them that you've been able to accomplish that.
Well, thank you. It's always amazing to me how long horses can function in that frame of mind. And that's one thing, that horses are resilient, right? And they're just amazing creatures. But it's always amazing to me when I get a horse and they're like, well, we've owned them for 15 years and they've never done XYZ. And then we get them in and they do learn they can make choices, and then they make a lot of choices, and it takes a long time. Like there was one horse that we were doing some groundwork with, and she was at Liberty, and I just wanted her to make a choice. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted her to do something at Liberty that was her own choice. I didn't want to tell her what to do. I just wanted her to make a choice. It took 45 minutes for that horse to just make a choice. Like I said, I don't care what it is at this point. I don't care if you turn and hightail it out of here, like, just make a choice. And it took so long. And that horse took a really, really long time to kind of get her back to neutral where she was. She didn't end up working out in our program long-term, because once we got her to where she was comfortable being herself, like, her core personality was not going to be happy here. And that's, I'll say it. We want our horses happy, healthy, sane, and sound. And if they're not happy, they can't do this job. They're not safe to do this job if they're not happy doing it. And we're really firm believers in that.
Absolutely. And that applies for most people. I mean, the large percentage of people who have horses have them because they want to have fun with them. They want to enjoy them. They're not out to be hardcore competition people. And most of us really do just want our horses to be happy, healthy, safe, and sound.
Yep.
So I think everybody can learn a lot from what you're doing with your program and what you do with the horses there.
Well, thank you.
You guys can be role models.
Thank you. Well, as we wrap up, I've just really enjoyed this conversation today. I think it's great. A lot of people are going to learn a lot of things from it, Lynn. How can people find you and more of your ideas and get in contact with you?
I have a website, which is my name, lynnacton.com, and a Facebook page, which is also my name. And I have a book. The book is titled What Horses Really Want. And it outlines just what we've been talking about today, the way that you can become your horse's protector so that your horse feels safe with you and develop your horse's emotional and intellectual abilities in a way that you have a cooperative, willing partner instead of an obedient servant.
Beautiful. Well, I will link all of those things for our listeners in the show notes below. Go out and buy her book and follow her on social, and you can get connected that way.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Thanks for inviting me.
of course, it was our pleasure. Before I let you go, though, Lynn, we always end our podcast with a question. And this year, the question is, Lynn, what is your golden rule? So if somebody were to remember you for one thing only, they didn't learn a single thing from you, which I think would be impossible. But if they didn't learn anything from you, what is one thing that you hope that people would take away?
I'd say my guiding principle is I want to be somebody who helps people and horses. If somebody needs something, I hope I have something useful to offer them. That's my goal.
Beautiful. I would say you're doing just that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lynn, and hopefully we'll see you again down the road sometime.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
What a great talk. I just think that so many of Lynn's perspectives are super realistic for us in the EAS industry and really something that we can be proud to stand behind when teaching our participants this method of a more empathetic approach. So kudos to Lynn. Go out and check her out on her social and her website. But I also wanted to just drop you guys a line. I did mention a couple resources in this podcast. I linked those in the show notes for you, both our volunteer structure and our preventing horse burnout webinars. So go over and check those out, and we'll see you guys on the next one.